with a thick neck and eyes that suggested he viewed empathy as a personal weakness. "Hi, honey," the man said, his gaze fixed firmly on Chrissy. "How about I buy you a real drink? Something with an umbrella." "No thanks," Chrissy said, shrinking back into her seat and looking at her shoes. "Go ahead, Jack," Jonna whispered, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Protect us. Hew some wood. Slay the dragon." Jack cleared his throat, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. He looked at the man's biceps, which were approximately the size of Jack's entire torso. Excuse me, sir. I think I should warn you that your behavior is statistically aggressive." The man turned his cold gaze toward Jack. "Is that so? The last guy who warned me about something ended up eating his meals through a straw for 6 months. You want to be next, Tinkerbell." Jack's voice jumped 3 octaves into a squeak. "Oh, well, I wouldn't want to cause a scene. My father always said violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. In fact, I think I see a very important phone call I need to make." In the parking lot, Jack sat back down, his face a shade of pale yellow that matched his beer. The man laughed, a deep, booming sound, and eventually wandered off to harass someone else. But the damage to Jack's ego was catastrophic. "I'm a coward," Jack moaned the next morning, his face buried in a bowl of soggy cereal. "I have chicken soup running through my veins. Let's face it, if there were a draft for a war against kittens, I'd be a conscientious objector." "You weren't a coward, Jack," Jonna said, trying to be supportive while stifling a laugh. "You were being prudent. Prudent people have spines, Jonna. Mine is made of overcooked al dente linguine. But destiny, in its infinite irony, offered a second chance. Later that night, Stanley Roper stumbled into the pub. He was suffering from a gargantuan toothache that made his face look like he was hiding a walnut in his cheek. He was cranky, miserable, and looking for a fight, when the same bully from the night before started mocking Stanley's pained expression. Something inside Jack finally snapped. Maybe it was the 3rd beer. Maybe it was the sight of his elderly landlord being bullied. Or maybe it was just the cumulative weight of years of giving nickels to fat Kenny Jensen. Jack stood up. He didn't just stand up. He marched over to the bully's table with a look of pure, unadulterated madness. "Hey, you!" Jack shouted, pointing a trembling finger. "You behaved like a total creep in here last night, and you're doing it again. You owe this man an apology, or you'll have to deal with me." The entire pub went silent. The bully stood up, looming over Jack like an impending natural disaster. "Is that right?" the man growled, cracking his knuckles. Jonna and Chrissy watched from the table, horrified. But then Jonna had a stroke of genius. She leaned over to the man's companion, a friend who looked slightly more reasonable, and whispered loudly enough for the bully to hear. "It's such a tragedy. Jack really tries to keep his cool. But ever since that terrible accident in the war, the steel plate they put in his head, if you hit him, The vibration sets off a neurological chain reaction. He won't feel a thing, but he'll become a human demolition machine. He once leveled a bar in Saigon with a single sneeze. The bully paused. He looked at Jack's head. He looked at Jack's wide, crazed eyes. He didn't know if it was true, but he wasn't willing to bet his life on it. Okay, the bully muttered, holding up his hands and backing away. Take it easy, Mac. I didn't know you were special. I'm sorry. Just don't vibrate. Jack stood there, triumphant and utterly confused, as the man fled the pub. He turned back to the girls, his chest puffed out so far he looked like a pigeon. I was a hero, Jack whispered, basking in the glow of his newfound reputation. A hero with a plate of destiny. Chapter 5. The $300 envelope and the financial aid fiasco. The high of Jack's perceived heroism didn't last long. Reality, in the form of a looming deadline, came crashing back. In apartment 4, the primary concern was now a white envelope marked rent in bold, black letters. It was a Monday morning, and the atmosphere was frantic. Jack, have you seen the envelope? Jana screamed, throwing sofa cushions across the room as if searching for a lost child. The one with the $300. The one we've been eating nothing but tuna fish and crackers for 2 months to save. Jack asked, his voice rising in a pitch of pure panic. I thought you had it in your purse. I put it on the shelf. Chrissy cried, her eyes filling with tears. Right next to the transistor radio I took to be repaired this morning. Wait, Jack stopped, his brain connecting the dots with horrifying speed. If you took the radio to the repair shop and the envelope was tucked underneath the radio, the realization hit them like a freight train. The front door had been left unlocked for 10 minutes. Someone, a burglar, a passerby, or a particularly wealthy squirrel had walked in and taken the envelope. The rent was gone. We've been robbed, Jana wailed, sinking onto the newly repaired couch. We're going to be evicted. Roper will have our heads on pikes in the lobby. He'll turn our rooms into a storage unit for his old National Geographics. They called the police, but the responding officer was a cynical veteran of the Santa Monica beat who had seen every scam in the book. He looked at the three of them, a man and two women sharing a residence in the progressive 70s, and clearly saw a transparent attempt to dodge the landlord. Nobody is stupid enough to leave $300 in an envelope clearly marked rent on an open shelf in an unlocked apartment, the officer said, snapping his notebook shut with a definitive click. Next time you kids want to fake a burglary to go on a weekend trip to Vegas, try breaking a window or acting a bit more upset. But we are that stupid, Jack protested, following him to the door. Stupidity is our primary character trait, with the law offering no refuge. Jack decided to take a more academic approach to their financial crisis. He headed to the financial aid office at his cooking school, hoping to secure an emergency student loan. The interview was a disaster of Shakespearean proportions. Jack, desperate to prove